Okay, we just finished talking about toxins. Are there any questions between what an endotoxin and an exotoxin? So let's now talk about enzymes. So enzymes are produced by the organisms or whatever, and they're released to the outside of the body where they have some kind of effect on tissues or cells or whatever. Right? Of which one of them is called hyaluronidase. Hyaluronidase is it's the proteins that hold the cells together, right? So a lot of people call it the cement of the cells. And so if an organism can break that down, then it spreads very easily through the tissues because it has a way to get through the tissues because it's opened up gaps in between cells. And so because of that, hyaluronidase is known as a spread factor, okay? And so it's important to understand that. This is a very important enzyme. So we do have kinases. So kinases used to be used in small amounts for some people who had cardiovascular problems. And they would give a little bit of kinases, and the kinases would go in there and it would dissolve the plaque. But there's a lot of ways to do it nowadays. It's not as expensive. They can put stents, they can do all kinds of different things, right? And so it's amazing how much of an art that type of cardiovascular surgery has become, where they don't even have to open up the chest anymore. They can go through the femoral artery and go up into the heart and then unblock the arteries or the veins that are around there. It's pretty cool. Okay. So those are all the weapons that we talked about, right? We have defense mechanisms, and it's really important. This is my favorite chart. So if we're talking about innate defenses are things you are born with, right? Just because you're a human, you're born with them, right? And so there are things like physical barriers like the skin and mucous membranes, chemical barriers, the chemicals that are produced by the skin, but all kinds of other places, right? Genetic components. Second line defense will be inflammation, the production of interferons. Interferons are molecules that are produced by every single cell of the body, but they're produced in a small amount. And the interferons do really great things. They have antiviral properties and they have anti-cancer properties. They interfere with transcription and translation of viral and cancer proteins, and so it shuts down really those types of diseases. We have phagocytosis, right, and complement, and these are all second line defenses. The third line defenses is natural immunity that you acquire throughout your entire life. By coming in contact with infectious agents or by coming in contact with vaccines. Right? The immune system doesn't understand the difference between an infectious agent being in your body and a vaccine. Right? It's going to treat it the same way, and then you develop immunity. We're going to talk about the immune system in just a minute. But let's go ahead and talk about the non-specific physical. This is your skin and your mucous membranes. The skin is a very good protection of our body. It's hard to get in it. There are some organisms like mosquitoes or things like that can penetrate it, but for the most part, as long as there's no breaks or breaches on the actual skin, nothing's gonna get in it. My cat likes to scratch me. It'll sit on my lap and it'll just it hurts, right? So, but now he's opened it up so that I might get an infection, right? And so you might see all the different chemicals that are produced by the body. Sebaceous glands. Is it good to sweat, Harlow?
Yeah.
Oh, really good to sweat. There's lots of things that get released in the sweat, and a lot of them have antimicrobial properties to them. Right? Sebum, oleic acid, there's a bunch of them. Right? The mucus and the saliva and the tears, they all have lysozyme in them, and so the lysozyme is an enzyme that breaks down the cell walls of bacteria and other organisms. Right? And then you can see, the ciliated cells of the trachea, they act as a mucus escalator, and they're always pulling things out of your lungs. At night, when you're at rest, you're asleep, your lungs are cleansing and stuff, the body heals, and all the stuff that's in the lungs are pulled up by the mucus, and they end up around the trachea, and then the trachea pulls it up to the back of the throat, and then you'll cough or whatever, and then it'll come out, right? So it's pretty important to understand how those things work. Smokers, people who smoke or vape, there's ciliated cells of the trachea get broken or fragmented, and then they don't work. And so the only way that smokers can clear their lungs is that deep smoker's cough. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, right? So that's the only way. These are flushing mechanisms. This is kind of what I'm going through right now, where I'm at the end of my infection. Thanks, Christy. I'm pretty sure you gave it to me. But sneezing, coughing, crying, lacrimation, sweating. The formation of earwax is a good thing, right? Everybody should have earwax in their ears. It doesn't have to be Shrek-like, but you need to have some there, right? Because it protects the ears. Okay, so the more scientific word for earwax formation is called cerumination, right? And that's a good word. Salivation, not to be confused with salvation, although that could save you also. But it's just a different way of looking at it. Defecation, that means pooping, and then peristalsis is the movement of food. You can see this young lady; she's sneezing, and you can see all those particles coming out of her ears and her mouth. The heavy particles are falling immediately, but the light ones are going to be in the atmosphere, in the room, flying around for a while. That's why we can pick up a cold from somebody who has it in them. Here's the ciliated cells in the trachea, right? Mucus escalator. And then you have all these chemical defenses, right? So the secretions of the sebaceous glands, like oils, oleic acid, those are all antimicrobial. If you're washing your face too often, or you're taking too many showers, you're removing the stuff that's supposed to protect you. My brother takes 3 showers a day.
That's bad.
Good Lord, his skin must be.
He's the cleanest boy I know, but man, he's just crazy.
Jeez.
Lysozyme in tears, lactic acid, electrolyte concentration in sweat, the pH of the skin and the fatty acid content of the oils that are released from the skin. We're very oily people. Are you with me? Yesterday I was on a video chat, and I was looking and the light was shining on my head. I'm like, man, my forehead is really shiny. You don't have a lot of forehead.
Yeah, but it keeps you youthful. It's sebaceous.
That's one way to look at it. The hydrochloric acid in the stomach, the digestive juices of the bile and the intestines, semen is actually in fluid that is antimicrobial. It protects the sperm. Isn't that interesting? And then the pH of the vagina. The pH of the vagina is designed for the formation and the growth of certain organisms, right? But there's not a lot of really bad organisms in the vagina. It is a pretty cool place, right? From a Addie, why are you looking at me like that? It's a pretty cool place from a microbiological perspective.
That's what he said.
Did you all know that when babies are born and come out of the birth canal, they are healthier than the babies who are born by cesarean?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because what?
Go. Yeah.
And the mama gives them a second gift. Mama gives them life, but
Yeah.
a second gift. All the natural organisms that are in the vaginal canal, the birth canal, they get put on the baby, and the baby is protected. It's
Is that why
just cool.
they come out like white and dirty?
They come in like what?
White and dirty?
Well, that's all the
That's
all the
the-
crap,
That's
stuff.
the afterbirth. That's
Yeah.
the placenta part and all that stuff.
All that yumminess that they were floating
I
around.
don't know about yummy. You know, some people eat the placenta. I'm like,
Well, that's what I said. Yeah. Yeah. But no.
Doesn't sound good at all.
Yeah, they'll give it to the dad and then the mom, but
No.
they say it's supposed to
No, no.
replenish whatever
No,
you
no.
lose.
But
Like, I'm
but
good.
kiddos who are born through cesarean, their first colonization of their little bodies is by the nursing staff and the physicians who touch them first. And those are all going to be environmental organisms that are out here, like bacillus and staph and things like that. So they have a whole different microbial flora. Pretty cool. You don't believe me, do you? Like, there's something. I don't know. I'm ready to check it out. We're gonna talk about complement later. Complement is a group of serum proteins. It is ancillary to the immune response, but it is part of the overall immune response. And this will actually put a hole in the membrane. We call that a membrane attack complex, which is known as a MAC. And then essentially when that happens in cells, the cells leak and they die. And so this is really cool. We'll get to top. So let's move into talking about
What kind of proteins was it?
what kind of what?
Proteins?
They're part of what we call the complement cascade. They have names, but the names are really letters and names, right? Letters and numbers. Let me show you.
You said a group of something.
Serum proteins. So do you? I don't know. Can you see those like C3A, C5? They all have kind of designation, but they don't have names. But that's what makes them membrane attack complex. What is interferons? Maybe I should talk about that again, since somebody missed it. Interferons are produced by every single cell, and they have antiviral and anti-cancer properties. Okay? Now we're ready.
And anti-cancer.
Uh-huh.
They're produced by every cell.
What's that?
You said produced by every cell?
Interferons.